Okay, y'all. So, LeBron James just picked up his phone, and one call, just quietly ended a 15-year reign that Drake has been sitting on like it belonged to his bloodline. And I need you to stop scrolling right now, because what I'm about to tell you is not a rumor, it is not a whisper, it is not some blog post pretending to be a scoop. This is the moment the culture flipped. This is the moment the NBA to hip-hop pipeline changed hands in real time. And baby, the man holding the keys now is not Drake. It is Kendrick Lamar. So, before y'all keep scrolling past this, sit down, put the phone flat, and let me walk y'all through exactly what LeBron said, why he said it, who he said it to, and why Drake's entire OVO empire is quietly leaking oil in the parking lot while nobody's looking. Okay, so let me catch y'all all the way up. Because if you don't know, the whole thing kicked off inside a 72-hour window right after Kendrick Lamar and Dave Free premiered a short film through their pgLang and Project 3 partnership with the NBA Players Association. Stephen Curry, yes, the Stephen Curry, stepped into that canvas, not with OVO, not with Drake, but with Kendrick. That was the first domino. And when a domino that size hits the floor in this industry, it does not tip quietly. It cracks. And the second that first domino cracked, LeBron James did not send a text. He did not have his agent call somebody's agent. He did not schedule a meeting. He picked up his own phone, dialed Kendrick Lamar directly, and had a conversation. Phone to phone. Man to man. No middlemen. No paper trail leaking to TMZ. And what they reportedly discussed on that call was not a song, was not a feature, was not a courtside photo op. It was a business framework. Y'all, a business framework. That is a whole different type of phone call. Now let me back up, because I know some of y'all don't fully understand how big this actually is. Drake has been the middleman between the NBA and hip-hop for over a decade. Drake sat courtside at every game that mattered. Drake had that OVO partnership with the Toronto Raptors that put his little owl on an entire NBA franchise. Every rapper who wanted to touch basketball culture had to route through Drake, or route around Drake. That was not a preference, y'all. That was a monopoly. And monopolies, once cracked, they don't glue themselves back together. They shatter, and the pieces get picked up by whoever's standing there ready to build something bigger. And guess who was standing there ready? Kendrick Lamar. Dave Free. pgLang. Project 3. Baby, they had the blueprints in their pocket the whole time. So take a look at what actually happened on the call, because this is the part that gave me chills. According to multiple sources familiar with the exchange, LeBron reached out inside that 72-hour window. And the subject was not, hey, congratulations on the film. The subject was expansion. Specifically, whether the Players United framework, the same framework Kendrick and Dave just launched, could scale beyond active roster stars, and start pulling in retired legends, brand ambassadors, and Hall of Fame names who have been sitting on unmonetized brand equity for literal decades. Y'all understand what that is? That is not an expansion. That is an entirely new vertical. Because retired NBA players are not out here selling jerseys. Retired NBA players are selling legacy. And legacy, when it is packaged the right way, compounds forever. It pays your grandkids. It pays your grandkids' grandkids. It is generational money. And Kendrick Lamar is the one holding the blueprint. Now let me tell you why LeBron specifically calling Kendrick matters, because a lot of people are treating this like it's a friendly little check-in. It is not. LeBron James is not just a basketball player. LeBron is a whole media enterprise. Spring Hill. Uninterrupted. Ladder. Wonderland. When LeBron plugs into a partnership, he is not just bringing a famous name to the table. He is bringing a vertically integrated content operation that can produce, distribute, and amplify at a level most rappers in the industry cannot even dream about. Which means what is forming between Kendrick Lamar and LeBron James right now is not a friendship, is not a photo op, is not a brothers in the culture moment. It is a merger. A merger of two of the most powerful independent black-owned media machines in America. And the person watching this merger form with quiet, professional, 5 a.m. can't sleep terror is the man who spent 15 years convinced that the bridge between the NBA and hip-hop had his name carved into it in permanent stone. And that man is Drake. Now let me get into the OVO of it all, because this part is happening in real time whether Drake wants to admit it or not. For years, the entire cultural credibility of OVO was tethered directly to its proximity to NBA power. The courtside seats. The player friendships. The Raptors partnership. The tunnel walks. All of that was equity. And Drake cashed in on that equity again, and again, and again, and again. But once Stephen Curry chose the pgLang canvas over the OVO gold at Cannes, and now that LeBron James is reportedly on the phone with Kendrick Lamar discussing an even bigger version of that same canvas, the OVO credibility doesn't just disappear overnight, it drains. Slowly. One high-profile relationship at a time. And there is nothing Drake can do to stop it. Because it is not being driven by an OVO scandal. It is not being driven by an OVO failure. It is being driven by a superior offer sitting on the other side of the table. Ownership. Equity. Long-term wealth architecture. That is what Kendrick Lamar is offering these athletes. And what has OVO historically been offering? Visibility. And cool. Baby, in 2026, athletes are not choosing cool anymore. They are choosing ownership. They are choosing to build their name into an asset that outlives their contract. And Drake does not have that to give. Let me break down what this new vertical is actually going to look like, because the reporting on the phone call points to 3 specific categories of NBA talent that Kendrick and Dave and LeBron are lining up. Number 1, retired superstars who want to monetize their brand equity directly to consumers instead of licensing it out to a middleman. Number 2, mid-career stars who are trying to build a real wealth structure before their playing contract runs out. And number 3, and this is the one that's gonna shake the whole industry, Hall of Fame legends whose historical commercial value has been massively underleveraged for 30 years while somebody else collected the check. Y'all hear me? 30 years. There are living legends of the game whose faces built entire brands they never owned a piece of. And Kendrick Lamar is about to put those men into a structure that pays them what they should have been paid the whole time. That is not an expansion of Players United. That is the construction of a full NBA-adjacent wealth ecosystem, with Kendrick and Dave sitting at the architectural center of it. Every retired player who signs on becomes another node in the pgLang network. Every current player watching those retirees finally get paid becomes more likely to sign up next. And every rookie walking into the league from this point forward looks around, sees the model already working, and asks their agent one question. Who do I call? And baby, they're not calling Toronto. Now let me set the contrast for y'all plain, because I want this to sink all the way in. Drake was courtside. Kendrick was in the boardroom. Drake was posing with the players. Kendrick was structuring deals with them. Drake was collecting cultural capital from the NBA. Kendrick was collecting equity stakes from the NBA Players Association. Drake was building relationships. Kendrick was building an institution. And when the pillars of a relationship start migrating over to an institution, the relationship does not just weaken. It becomes obsolete. Y'all hear me? Obsolete. And obsolete is not the same as beaten. Obsolete means nobody has to fight you anymore. Obsolete means the market already moved. Obsolete means the world quietly stopped needing you to exist. And Drake, whether he understands it yet or not, just watched a piece of his market walk out the door with LeBron James on the other line. Now here's where the cascade actually starts, and I need y'all locked in for this next part, because if LeBron officially signs on to this expanded Players United vertical, the second-order effects across the entire league are catastrophic for anybody trying to hold up a competing NBA-to-culture bridge. Every player LeBron James has ever mentored, and there are literally dozens of them stacked across the league, instantly gets a soft recommendation to look at the pgLang partnership. Every media property LeBron controls instantly becomes a distribution pipe for Players United content. Every legacy business relationship LeBron has spent 20 years cultivating across sports, entertainment, streaming, and Hollywood becomes a potential on-ramp for Kendrick Lamar and Dave Free to walk right through. This is not one domino falling. This is one domino picking up a phone and telling every other domino in the room exactly where to line up. And when dominoes line up on command like that, they do not tumble at random. They tumble in one direction. Kendrick's direction. Now I already hear the counter-argument coming in the comments, and it's gonna sound like this. It's gonna say, this is one phone call. This is one deal. It's not a permanent shift. Drake still has the Raptors partnership. Drake still has cultural capital. Drake still has friendships. And to that, I hear you, I really do. But baby, cultural capital without ownership infrastructure has a shelf life. The Drake model was built on visibility and vibe. That model worked for a full decade because there was no serious alternative sitting across the table. Kendrick Lamar and Dave Free built that alternative. And now that the alternative exists, and now that the alternative is offering ownership, equity, and generational wealth architecture instead of a hat and a shout-out, no rational professional athlete on this planet is going to choose vibe over structure. Cultural capital does not compound. Ownership does. Y'all write that down. Screenshot it. That is the sentence that ends the 15-year monopoly. Let me zoom out for a second, because I want y'all to feel the actual size of what is happening in front of us. This is what a generational business shift looks like. It is not a press release. It is not a red carpet. It is not a shiny public announcement with balloons. It is one phone call. Between a rapper from Compton and a basketball player from Akron. And an entire monopoly in the sports-to-culture pipeline is quietly evaporating in slow motion, in real time, while most of the internet is still arguing about a diss track from 2 years ago. Kendrick Lamar is not building a hip-hop empire anymore, y'all. That framing is already outdated. Kendrick Lamar is building a Black American cultural business ecosystem, one that connects music, film, sports, ownership, and legacy into a single integrated operation running across multiple industries at the same time. And every superstar who joins that ecosystem lowers the friction for the next superstar to join it after them. That is how ecosystems compound. That is how empires get built without anybody outside the room realizing an empire is even being built. Now people keep saying Kendrick is this generation's Jay-Z, and I understand the comparison, but let me correct it because it is not tight enough. Jay-Z absolutely opened doors for rappers, athletes, and executives who came behind him. That is a fact, that is not a diss, but large chunks of the Jay-Z empire are still tethered to mega-conglomerate partners like Live Nation, still tethered to structures that HOV did not fully own. What Kendrick and Dave have built with pgLang and Project 3 is different in kind. It is not tethered. It is not licensed out. It is owned. It is operated. It is theirs. They are the system. Which means when Kendrick Lamar walks into a room with LeBron James, Stephen Curry, or Kyrie Irving, he is not showing up as talent asking for a placement. He is showing up as a principal. And principals cut a different kind of deal than talent does. That is the shift the algorithm has not caught up to yet. That is the shift the culture is only just now starting to metabolize. That is why LeBron James picking up his own phone and calling Kendrick Lamar directly is not a gossip item. It is a market signal. Now let me talk about where Drake fits into all of this, or rather, where Drake no longer fits into any of it. Because for the entire arc of Drake's career, his gravitational pull was tied to his ability to be inside every room. Inside the studio. Inside the tunnel. Inside the courtside seat. Inside the group chat. Inside the DM. But baby, Drake was never inside the ownership stack. Drake was inside the frame of the photograph. He was not inside the cap table. And now that the cap table is what matters, now that ownership is the actual currency, now that Kendrick Lamar is the man sitting at the head of the table signing off on structural moves with LeBron and Steph and Kyrie, the frame of the photo does not carry the weight it used to. The frame is decorative. The cap table is decisive. Drake has spent 15 years perfecting decorative. Kendrick Lamar has spent 5 years perfecting decisive. Now y'all tell me which one wins in a boardroom. There is another layer to this that hasn't been reported yet, and I need y'all to stay with me for it, because the LeBron and Kendrick conversation, according to people familiar with the exchange, also reportedly touched on a media production component. Meaning an in-house content arm designed to document the players' united journey, tell the individual player stories, and build a proprietary distribution channel that does not have to beg for placement on ESPN, TNT, or any legacy sports network. Now think about that carefully. If Kendrick Lamar, Dave Free, and LeBron James are seriously discussing an own media pipe that tells NBA player stories at the level of pgLang's visual language, that is not just a business, y'all. That is a threat. A direct threat to every legacy sports media outlet that has spent 30 years depending on player access as its entire competitive moat. And player access is exactly the moat Kendrick is quietly starting to control. Now think about the OVO chessboard from Drake's side of the table. Drake still has OVO. Drake still has the Raptors partnership. Drake still has the tunnel photos. But the players who fill those tunnels are being quietly courted, one at a time, by an operation that is offering them structural upside instead of a hat and a shout-out. Every Stephen Curry moment at Cannes. Every LeBron James phone call. Every Kyrie Irving narration on a Players United short. Every Jaylen Brown, Jalen Brunson, Karl Anthony Towns, and Gabe Vincent name showing up in a pgLang credit roll. That is not a talent shift. That is a supply chain shift. And Drake does not have a counteroffer. Because Drake does not own a comparable vertical. Drake owns songs and merch. Kendrick Lamar owns the ecosystem that the songs and the merch would need to plug into. And that is the asymmetry nobody wants to say out loud on the timeline. Here's what really gets me, though, and I want to name it, because the win Kendrick is putting on the board right now is not a rap win. It is not a hot verse. It is not a viral snippet. It is a paperwork win. It is a legal structure win. It is a partnership architecture win. And rap culture, for a long time, has been terrible at recognizing paperwork wins. Because paperwork wins do not go viral. They don't produce a snippet you can quote tweet. But baby, paperwork wins are the wins that outlast the news cycle. Paperwork wins are the wins that show up in your grandchildren's inheritance. And Kendrick Lamar is stacking paperwork wins while every other rapper in the industry is still trying to win the timeline. Now I need to talk about Kyrie Irving for a second, because Kyrie has been the most undercredited operator in this entire chain of events. Kyrie was the on-ramp. Kyrie was the bridge between Kendrick Lamar and the deeper Players Association leadership. Kyrie narrating the Players United short film was not decorative casting. It was Kyrie publicly signaling to the entire league that Kendrick Lamar is the man he trusts to hold the artistic keys to a project the Players Association considers foundational. And when Kyrie vouches, other players listen. When Kyrie vouches, Steph pays attention. When Kyrie vouches, LeBron James picks up his own phone. That is not a coincidence. That is a network effect being triggered by a very specific catalyst. And Kyrie Irving is the catalyst everyone keeps forgetting to properly credit. And here is why the LeBron James call to Kendrick Lamar is so unprecedented. Because LeBron does not, call into a project without a plan already fully formed in his head about how his own media apparatus is going to amplify it. LeBron does not window shop. When LeBron calls Kendrick, LeBron is not calling to congratulate. LeBron is calling to align. And the alignment of the two most powerful independent black-owned media operations in America, at the exact cultural moment when the old sports-to-hip-hop pipeline is fracturing, is not a story. It is a plot point in the collapse of an entire era. So what does Drake do now? That is the question every OVO insider is reportedly asking behind closed doors this week. And the honest answer? There is no clean move on the board for Drake. Drake cannot outbid Kendrick on ownership, because Drake does not own comparable infrastructure. Drake cannot outbid Kendrick on cultural authenticity, because that ship sailed a long time ago and the receipts are on Spotify. Drake cannot outbid Kendrick on athlete relationships, because the athletes are already migrating. Drake cannot outbid Kendrick on visual language, because pgLang has been running circles around every rap visual operation for the last 2 years straight. Drake can only outbid Kendrick Lamar on one single thing, and that is volume of output. Which is exactly why we keep seeing 3 albums a year. Which is exactly why we keep seeing constant social posting. Which is exactly why we keep seeing feature run after feature run. Because when you cannot outbid on structure, all you can do is outbid on noise. And noise is a losing game when you're up against a rival who already went silent, because he doesn't need the noise anymore. Let me zoom back out one more time, because the LeBron call to Kendrick is not really even about Drake, y'all. It is bigger than Drake. It is bigger than the beef. It is bigger than the timeline of who dissed who. It is about what the next 30 years of the Black American culture industry are going to look like, and who is going to own the plumbing that carries the water. And right now, that plumbing is being welded together in a set of quiet phone calls, a set of quiet meetings, and a set of quiet document signings between Kendrick Lamar, Dave Free, LeBron James, Stephen Curry, Kyrie Irving, and the leadership of the Players Association. That is where the future is being drafted. That is where the ownership positions are being carved out. That is where the long money is being placed. And nobody who is loud right now is in that room. Because the people in that room already understand that being loud is not the same as being positioned. One more angle before I let y'all go, and this is the one that is gonna hit hardest, so lock in. It is the youth angle. Because every rookie entering the NBA over the next 3 drafts is going to walk into an environment where the successful business model for a modern athlete is already visibly demonstrated on the wall. And that visible demonstration is pgLang, Project 3, and Players United. Not OVO. Not the label deal. Not the old model of taking a hat, taking a photo, and hoping the endorsement lasts 1 season. These rookies are going to see Stephen Curry, LeBron James, and Kyrie Irving all plugged into a structure that pays them in equity and long-term ownership, and they are going to turn to their agent, and they are going to ask one simple question. How do I get in? And that question, y'all, is the question that ends the entire old model in 1 sentence. And Kendrick Lamar is the person holding the answer. So when y'all hear people say that Kendrick Lamar has been quiet this year, quiet on features, quiet on social, quiet on the timeline, I need y'all to understand what quiet has actually meant. Quiet has meant building. Quiet has meant signing. Quiet has meant structuring. Quiet has meant meeting after meeting after meeting with people who move markets. Quiet has meant a phone call from LeBron James that a year ago nobody in the entire industry would have predicted. Quiet has meant Kendrick Lamar turning himself from a rapper into a principal, from a principal into an operator.